Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third of our four-part women's series, Women's Role in Managing HR on Family-Owned Farms. I am your host, Caitlin Dubin, and I am so excited to be here with you today in this new year. I myself am a first-generation farmer, I'm a storyteller, and I'm a community builder. I have had the privilege of celebrating the stories of women in agriculture, just like you, through my podcast, the Rural Woman Podcast, since 2019. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. We are going to spend the next hour together, and I am confident you are going to learn a lot about work-life balance while learning strategies and tools to help you balance business goals for long-term success. As we get started, I want to acknowledge that I am coming to you from the Treaty 7 territory lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pay respect to all Indigenous people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, Viktoria Schuler, there is a little housekeeping. This session will be recorded and a link will be sent out to everyone who is registered. So if you must sneak away early or you want to share this with your family or a friend, that will be available to you in a few days. As you may or may not have noticed, today's session is the third of a four-part series. After today, there will be one additional session, which we will speak on farm transition planning. If you haven't already done so, please make sure to register for the upcoming session, and we will provide a link to that registration in the post-event email. If you have any technical question, there is a blue support button down on the bottom lower part of your screen. Click on there and ask any of your questions, and someone will be happy to help you. As you may also have noticed, there is a chat on the right-hand side of your screen. Drop a hello in there and let us know where you're dialing in from today. Beside the chat, there is also a Q&A box, and that is the place for you to feel free to ask as many questions as you have in there, and we will get to as many of the questions as we can after the session. The Q&A is moderated, and I will be asking the questions at the end of the session, and your questions can be anonymous. There is also going to be polling questions, which will be posted throughout the presentation, and you can find that beside the Q&A box. Please take a quick moment to complete the questions once they become available. Now, let me introduce you to our keynote speaker, Viktoria Schuler. Viktoria has over 15 years of experience in agricultural, human resource management, policy development, recruitment, global mobility, and immigration. Victoria is now a project manager for HR services with the Canadian Agriculture Human Resource Council, also known as the CAHRC. Please help me welcome Victoria to the stage. Good morning, Victoria.
Hello. Thank you for introduction. And it's a great honor for me to be here today and discuss the topic that is so close to my heart, human resource management on family farms and the integral, vital, and very often overlooked role that women play in it. And
Victoria,
by the end
I have my notebook ready and waiting to take all of the notes and get all of the information from you. And I know there's so many women with us today that are doing the same. So please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. By the end of our time together, I hope you all will feel inspired and recognized for the role you're playing in ensuring your farm success, and that everyone leaves with some practical notes and tips and strategies how to enhance your farm HR practices. Thank you for doing land acknowledgement, Caitlin. I just wanted to say that this presentation is done from Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis Treaty 6 encompasses the land of the Cree, Dene, Nakota, Dakota, Lakota, and Saluta people. And this is the picture of my home city, Saskatoon. And this is how it looked this morning. We had minus 18. It actually looks like this probably 6 months of the year. But I'm not complaining. If I love Saskatoon, if you have never been here, like please visit, maybe in summer. And I'd like to start giving you a bit of a background about myself, as while I continue speaking, you're probably wondering where my accent is from. So here is a bit of the story. I was born in Eastern Ukraine. In that time, it was the Soviet Union, and my dad served in the Navy. I spent my childhood on a small rural military base near the borders of China and North Korea. And when my dad retired from the army service, our family moved back to Eastern Ukraine and eventually settled in Kyiv. Now there is a bit of twist. Until my 20s, I'd never even heard of Saskatchewan. That's where I'm located right now. And I had plans to work as a translator with the United Nations. But during early 2000, I was interning as a student of Institute of Foreign Languages in the Kyiv city office. And I was asked to assist with the translation for a meeting with the representatives from Saskatchewan provincial government. They were on a mission in Ukraine at that time, looking to hire some trades skilled people. I'll admit we had a good laugh in the office at that time, trying to pronounce Saskatchewan for the first time and searching it on a map. But the meeting actually changed the course of my life. I ended up managing the government-facilitated project on immigration on the Ukrainian side for many years. And my first trip to North America was to a small town of Teasdale in Saskatchewan, where I helped a group of welders to settle and start working at the steel manufacturing plant. And fast forward today, I've been in Canada for over 9 years. Initially, when I moved to Saskatoon, I worked for the recruitment and immigration firm. We were helping farmers across Western Canada with foreign worker recruitment. But over time, we noticed that some farm operations are becoming revolving doors for employers. While that was good for business, it was definitely not great for the farmers. And that's where we began focusing on HR consulting, developing job descriptions, performance management systems, and retention strategies. 2 years ago, I joined CARC, or Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council, and my job is to develop tools and resources to assist employers with different aspects of HR management on the farm. On a personal note, I live in Saskatoon, with my husband and 2 kids. My father-in-law comes from a small grain farm near White Bear, Saskatchewan. He's now retired. I always joke that if he would ever need my HR help, he would probably be my toughest HR client. And that's all about me. That's this final third picture, like if you're interested, was generated by AI tool provided by Agriculture in the Classroom. I will be discussing further like how we can use AI right nowadays to assist with different HR needs on the farm. And I find it very, like always fun to play with some new technology. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what is the woman roles on the farm? And this is the fundamental question. And for me, this picture from a book, Go Dog Go, which is, by the way, my 2-year-old daughter is completely obsessed with, perfectly represents women on a farm. Picture yourself. You are wearing a fancy hat with multiple items, and you're climbing a wobbly ladder, trying to keep everything in balance. And this is a metaphor for many hats women wear on the farms today. On a side note, I do have some questions to the author of this book. Why does this pink poodle dog keep asking the yellow male dog if he likes her hat? And why does she have to come back every time with increasingly fancier hats? Or why does it matter what the yellow dog thinks and why can't she wear what just she likes. But back to the topic, women on family farms juggle multiple responsibilities. Everything from preparing meals for the harvest crew to overseeing some critical business management tasks. And yet, despite these efforts, the contributions of women are often overlooked. Next slide, please. In 2023, Farm Management Canada, in partnership with Centric Engine, released the research that highlights the vital role that women play in driving farm success across Canada. And the findings were eye-opening. Women are making extraordinary contributions in every aspect of farm operations. However, the research also shows that very often women are feeling undervalued, are not supported, and their skills are not being utilized to 100%. As a part of this research, over 1,000 farm women were surveyed based on their involvement in various farm activities for the farm management. And like a score 4 indicated deep involvement and score 5 indicated significant involvement. And I know that you're participating in these questions, but let's just break it down. Like financial bookkeeping, it's a sole responsibility or deep involvement in 69% cases. Financial planning and analysis, 61%. Managing paperwork and farm support programs, 61%. Strategic and business planning for the farm, 51%. Payroll and benefits, 51%. Additionally, women also involved in regulatory compliance and succession or transition planning. Interestingly, and perhaps not surprisingly, people management, staff planning, and evaluation didn't rank among the top activities. For many operations, HR often is not prioritized until it becomes really urgent, like a staff shortage at seeding or harvest time, or when a sudden family illness arises. And this is why proactive HR management is so essential. It's not just nice to have, it is vital for sustainable farm operations. Next slide, please. And from my experience, many operations tend to describe the HR role on the farm as managing paperwork, processing payroll, timesheets, preparing meals for the crew, and posting job advertising, or sometimes organizing fun activities like Christmas party for the staff. And while this task is certainly in the picture, HR on farm goes much far beyond hiring and payroll. HR, it's about building systems and processes that support the people who keep the operation running. And it's about fostering the positive work environment, ensuring compliance with labor laws, managing performance, and resolving conflicts. HR is about preparing for unexpected, having strategies in place to address staffing shortages during critical times. Very often, my farming clients would say, we don't need this fancy HR. We've been operating like that for years, and HR is not our priority. We have other things to do. But then when you ask a question like, that's great, but do you have systems and processes in place to ensure that seeds actually can go in the ground if you're not around? Like things happen, heart attack or accident, anything can happen to prevent you from giving directions. What would happen then? And this is when it starts resonating, as like most insurance policies may not kick in until your crop is in the ground. And that's when people start to realize that HR, it's not just about organizing a Christmas party or processing payroll. It's about keeping farm running smoothly and securing its future and ensuring its long-term success. Next slide, please. This is just a textbook definition of human resource management. I'll read it out. Ensuring the organization has the right people with the right skills at the right time and creates the right environment that enables and motivates people to do the right things. And I'm going to break it down to better understand the meaning of it. Right people. The foundation of HR is ensuring you have the right people. And this means hiring individuals who not only have the skills and knowledge required, but also aligned with your firm's value and culture. It's not about just filling a job vacancy. Very often, it's about building a team. Right skills. Again, it's not just about hiring people. It's about making sure that people have tools and training that will help them to succeed. And on the farm, it could mean training someone to operate a new piece of equipment or helping to adapt to new safety protocols. Right time. Timing is everything in farming. And whether it's like seeding or harvesting or calving season, having right people in place at the right time can either break or make your operation. And effective HR management ensures that the staffing levels meet your farm's seasonal demands. Right environment. This one is very often overlooked element of HR. Creating the right environment means fostering a workplace where people feel valued, supported, and motivated. And the last one, motivating people to do the right things. HR is about encouraging people to bring their best to the table. And when employees understand their roles, when they have clear expectations, when they feel appreciated, they're more likely to go far and beyond. And on the farm, that level of engagement can translate to productivity, loyalty, and long-term success. Next slide, please. Does this picture resonate to you? Here is an interesting comparison. Businesses in cities in industries like manufacturing or hospitality with the revenue that is similar to a medium-sized farm typically have at least one dedicated HR generalist managing core HR functions, or sometimes even entire HR department with several team members. On family farms, however, HR often looks different. It's frequently managed around the kitchen table where strategy and operational issues are discussed. And let's face, sometimes HR can become even more problematic on a family farm because conversations can sometimes get quite emotionally heated because of the family members being involved. And this shows us the unique challenges and the opportunities in HR management on family farms. Next slide, please. Here is just a little bit more theory for you, the HR iceberg concept. And this is the metaphor that perfectly illustrates the reality of human resource management. What you see above the line is just the tip of the iceberg. And this is this visible tasks that we often associate with HR. But all we know that what's beneath the surface is where the real work lays. For example, if we dive below the surface and take an example from the farm, it could be developing succession plans. It could be conflict resolution, whether it's between employees or family members. It could be compliance with labor laws and regulations, creating a safe and supportive work environment, strategic workforce planning, or leadership development and training to prepare for future challenges. And these foundational elements very often can make or break an operation. And the challenge is that those hidden aspects of HR often take in much more time and energy and expertise, and they're very rarely acknowledged. And especially on the farms, on family farms where business and family intersect, these hidden components could be even more complex. And by understanding those challenges and understanding the HR icebergs, farm operators can start addressing those challenges more proactively. And again, it's about creating system and structures in place to ensure farm sustainability. So when you think about HR on your farm, don't just focus on tip of the iceberg. Think about what lies beneath. Next slide, please. And if we talk about why HR management matters and what is the real value of having effective HR practices on your farm, it touches every aspect of your operation, your team, your family, and your bottom line. like improved productivity. When the right people are in the right roles and they feel supported, the productivity increases significantly. For example, clear job roles and expectations help employees focus on their task, reducing downtime and insufficiencies. Or stronger relationships. HR is not just about paperwork and compliance. It's about building trust and fostering better relationships in your team. Or lower employee turnover. Recruiting and training new staff takes time and money. And retaining your team by offering fair treatment, clear expectations, and development opportunities saved from the cycle of constant recruiting and retraining. So now let's think about your farm. How would you what would you to improve your HR practices and include them in your day-to-day operation? What would you change what would change if your team is more engaged and your family relationships were stronger and you didn't have to worry about hiring for the next season? Next, I'm going to dive into some common HR challenges from our polling questions. And also share some practical tips and strategies. Next slide, please. So we'll start with work-life balance. How many of us feel like we've nailed it? For most of us, it's a constant juggling act, especially on family farms where the boundaries between work and home are often just blurred. According to recent research, 55% of farm families report difficulties in achieving work-life balance. And it's not hard to see, especially for women. We often manage multiple roles. We manage operational tasks, support the family, and often sacrifice our personal well-being to keep everything running. And this imbalance can lead to burnout, stress, and even strained relationships. Next slide, please. So here are some strategies on managing work-life balance. Flexible work schedules. Flexible work schedules allow individuals to manage family commitments while meeting the demands on the farm. For instance, during the calving season, you may have one team member who works an early shift to monitor the cows, while another starts later to cover the evening and night. And it's not only ensures the coverage, but also allows each person to balance their work responsibilities with personal commitments like school drop-offs or some caregiving duties. The second one is breaks and time off policies. Encouraging breaks and breaks and time off prevent the burnout. Farming is physically and emotionally demanding, with some multiple decisions being made in a short period of time that can affect you. And intentional rest is really important. And as an example, like it's especially important during peak times, peak seedings like seeding or calving, where exhaustion can creep in fast. And even like short breaks, like 15 minutes power nap, can actually help you to focus and reset. Strategy number 3, value personal time. This means fostering a culture where personal time is respected and it's not seen as a weakness or luxury. I would provide you with an example. Encourage family members to pursue hobbies or spend time with the families, or just have a designated unplugged time, like from 7 to 8 p.m. every evening. Everyone agrees to pause farm-related tasks and enjoy family dinner together. Or agree on no work zones, like don't discuss work in the bedroom if it's possible. Outsource when possible. Bring in part-time help during like seeding or admin help during a tax season so that you can take some rest. And the most important is to avoid guilt around taking a personal time off. Next slide, please. Equitable workforce distribution. Let's start with the question. How often do you hear someone say on your farm, why am I always the one doing this? And uneven work distribution doesn't just create tension, it impacts productivity, relationships, and ultimately the success of the operation. Do you know that for a workload allocation can increase productivity by 15%? And it's not just about productivity, it's about harmony and trust. Next slide, please. Next slide. I'm going to talk about some tips on the workload distribution. The number one is regular feedback and communication. I know I do talk about communication a lot, but try to conduct like regular meetings to discuss the workload assessments. Try to find what works best for you. It doesn't have to be a Monday morning meeting. I'm never a fan of Monday mornings meetings because everyone is already busy and stressed. It could be Tuesday lunch or Thursday afternoon. Just try to build a system that works for you. Allocate time for a meeting in your calendar. And it doesn't have to last for 1 hour. It can be short if there is not much to discuss. But start with the simple questions and ask like how things went during the week, who felt overwhelmed, who felt that they had too much downtime, and why it works. The open communications build transparency and trust. Plus, if everyone feels that they have a voice, you are less likely to hear, it's not fair, I'm quitting, especially at your busiest time. The second tip is role description and tracking. Clarity is power, and when everyone knows what to expect, there is less room for miscommunication or different unmet expectations. And if you're just starting with your HR practices, think about creating a big chalkboard or a digital tracker that just outlines who is responsible for what, who is responsible for maintenance, who is responsible for packing lunches for the crew. If you would like to do it on paper, I will provide you later with a template. And why would it work? You wouldn't hear anymore, oh, I thought you were doing that. Additionally, if you see that tasks are visually mapped, it makes it much easier to adjust, especially when you have some surprises. And tip number 3 is evaluate and work with perceptions. Perceptions matter, and sometimes even more than reality. Let's say one family member feels like they're always stuck with the dirty job while others handle less intensive tasks. A quick discussion could reveal that the tasks are not actually equal, and that's when some small changes can make a big difference. So again, equitable workload distribution, it's not just about who does what, it's about fostering respect, understanding, and teamwork. And again, remember, a little communication can go a long way. Next slide, please. Legal compliance. Family farm operates in a highly regulated environment with over 100 federal and provincial labor laws. And this touches everything from employee rights and wages and working conditions and temporary foreign worker program regulations or safety standards. Navigating these regulations can feel like trying to solve a complex puzzle. Many of us are not legal experts, yet the stakes can be quite high. And missing even one small regulation can lead to penalties and sometimes in the thousands of dollars. Next slide, please. Here are some tips of legal compliance essentials. Basic knowledge of main regulations, whether it's a minimum wage, health and safety standards. Understanding the basic helps you steer everything in a clear direction. And for example, employing family members doesn't always exempt you from your legal responsibilities. Or training and staying up to date. Labor laws are constantly evolving and changing, and sometimes you can just be incompliant unintentionally because you don't know about those changes. Make a habit of attending training sessions or workshops. Even a couple of hours can save you thousands of dollars. For example, CARC regularly conducts free webinars on updates in temporary foreign worker program. and record keeping. In case of audits or disputes, detailed records act as your safety net and safety blanket. Document everything: employment agreements, payroll records, rental deductions, even important family discussions about work expectations or succession planning. For example, you as an employer are required to keep employment and payroll records for at least 36 months. But if you employ temporary foreign workers, this time extends up to 6 years. Next slide, please. Conflict management. And have you noticed that even like sometimes smaller disagreements can snowball into major disruptions on the farm? For family-run farms where personal relationships and business are always connected, conflicts are inevitable. In fact, 45% of farmers report that disputes with family members are one of the biggest stresses. And addressing those tensions head-on is critical, not just for maintaining your harmony in a family, but for keeping farm running smoothly and effectively. Next slide, please. Here are some strategies for conflict resolutions. Again, open communication. Creating a space for honest conversation can cut conflict severity in half. For example, those weekly check-in meetings, so that you can discuss smaller issues before they become bigger problems. Ask yourself, what simple steps could you take this week to improve your communication on the farm? The second one is training and mediation. Equip your team with some basic conflict resolution skills throughout workshops or online resources. For example, CARC had a webinar on how to conduct difficult conversations with your employees and provide constructive feedback. And when it's necessary, involve a third party. Sometimes a mediator could help you with dealing with such sensitive issues like finances or responsibilities or succession. And regular check-in. Just think of those check-in as preventive maintenance for your team dynamic. There is another practice that I would like to share with you, that could help with the conflict management, and it is an interrogative technique called 5 whys. And my 2-year-old daughter is actually successfully using it nowadays because she is in her why stage. But this technique can be quite useful in conflict resolutions. So the 5 why technique is based on the idea that you ask why 5 times, and it is usually enough to reveal the root cause of the problem. So how does this work? When there is a problem or disagreement, start by asking, why did this happen? Once you have an answer, ask again, why, and repeat it 5 times. And every why will peel back a layer, bringing you closer to the root cause. Just an example, let's say 2 team members are arguing over who should handle a particular task on a farm. So you ask why? Because there is a confusion in responsibilities. You ask why again? Because the roles are not clearly defined. Why again? Because there is no task assignment process in place. Why? Because we've never had a procedure of delegation or task management. And why? Because everyone just assumes that everyone just knows what to do. So by the 5th why, we actually identified the real issue, a lack of structured process on the farm, and resolving that fixes the immediate conflict, but it also prevents issues from happening in the future. Next slide, please. Succession planning. At my recent check-in with my peers, we were casually chatting about sharing Christmas stories and how Christmas went. And while I was complaining about being tired of cooking meals for 10 people for 5 days in a row, one of my peer, a lady who is a farmer, she shared something. She said, we went through the succession plan last year. We don't have a family anymore. And this statement highlights just how deeply personal and challenging the succession planning can be. And while every family is unique, the difficulties of succession planning are nearly universal across the farm. And the reality is that farms without a succession plan are 50% more likely to dissolve within the next generation. And it is a reminder that despite the discomfort, succession planning is vital for preserving both the farm's legacy and the family relationships. Next slide, please. Here are some tips on development a succession plan. First, start early, like be proactive, develop a training plan to ensure successors can take over the operation. Communication is another critical aspect. Discuss all aspects of the plan, from financial roles to operational roles and decision-making process. For instance, I often hear an example, Brian or Dad, oh, he wants to slow down. So clarify, what does slow down mean? Does it mean that they will be spending winters in Arizona in their new property while the new generation is stuck on the farm and can't take a vacation? Or does it mean that Brian is going to work only a few hours a week and take some impromptu days off for golfing? How will he be compensated? And how his role is going to change, and what is the decision-making process? These questions need clear answers, and not just for the family, but also for team members, if you have those, and they might be impacted as well. So you might be surprised what slowing down may mean for different people. And it is always recommended to have a written plan in place, review and change it, but document every new changes as well. Next slide, please. Feedback mechanism. Let's just take a moment to consider how often do we truly listen, not just hear, but to understand what our family members or employees are sharing about the work environment. Feedback mechanisms are essential, and not just for solving issues, but also for fostering a workplace where everyone feels valued and heard. Next slide, please. Here are some tips on feedback mechanism. First is regular performance reviews. And performance reviews shouldn't feel like a chore. They are an opportunity to celebrate a success and also identify the areas for improvement. I always used to recommend to use so-called sandwich method when providing feedback. You start with a positive feedback, just to set a good tone, and follow with some critical or constructive feedback, which is the filling of your sandwich, and then close with another positive comment to leave the person feeling encouraged. When I introduced this method to my husband to help him give feedback to our son, he jokingly said that, oh, interesting, my dad never used this method with me. I just got the burger patties thrown at me every time. But with the performance review, also consider the annual review, maybe in the beginning of the year, before the wage review for your employees. The other interesting tool is 360-degree approach. In HR, there are 360-degree and 180-degree feedback models. And these are the tools that are used to provide insights into employee performance and development. 180-degree is designed to gather input from people that work on the same level with you, like your peers and colleagues and your direct supervisor. At the same time, 360-degree feedback model is more comprehensive and holistic, and it also includes stakeholders at all levels, clients and customers. 360-degree evaluation can focus on such areas as teamwork, character, communication, and leadership skills. And it can also help you to identify blind spots and areas for development. So feedback isn't just a one-time event. It's an ongoing culture with the continuous improvement, and creating an environment where family members and employees feel comfortable sharing constructive criticism, ensure that farm can evolve together with their team members and the operation. Next slide, please. And we've explored how HR can support your daily operations, but I also would like you to think of HR as a strategic partner for your business. It's not just about hiring a payroll, as we discussed. It's about aligning your HR practices with your long-term vision. Again, another textbook definition, but I will just put it in a simple way. When implementing HR tools and practices, ask yourself, how does this help us to achieve our broader goal? How does this align with what we want to do as a business in the future? And for example, Clark is currently consulting a family farm in southern Alberta, and they only have 2 hired employees right now, but they are developing a pay grade and compensation and performance management system with the future in mind. And they're building a framework that they can use 5 or 10 years down the road, even after their organizational structure will become more complex. And this kind of forward thinking is what transforms HR from like a functional task to more of a strategic advantage. Next slide, please. This is a slide from a blog of a farm transition coach and speaker, Elaine Fraze. Elaine is based in Manitoba, and she is a go-to expert for farm families who want better communication and conflict management, especially with successful farm transition. And if you are starting your farm transition journey, she recommends to get clarity on the following questions. Like vision, how do we want family to participate in this farm? Who gets to be an owner? Who do they buy in? Do we need a marriage contract? What if folks want to exit or come to the farm later? What guidelines do we have for the off-farm experience? Who gets to work on this farm, and so on? You can read those questions. So I recommend you to think about it, ask these questions yourself, and maybe discuss it at your next family meeting. And another good recommendation is Elaine, also an author of a book that I highly recommend to look into. It's called Farming in Law Factor: How to Have More Harmony and Less Conflict on a Family Farms. Highly recommend you to look at this book if you're going through a succession planning right now. Next slide, please. And also, when you start working on developing your roles and responsibilities, these are the examples of the roles that is recommended to describe. And again, it's totally normal for one team member to be responsible for several roles, like general management, negotiation, secretarial, legal support functions, and so on. Next slide, please. This is the template that can be used as well for the roles description. I like to keep things simple in HR. So just start with a job summary statement, list the responsibilities, even 5 bullet points would be enough. Performance metrics, how do we know that the job is well done? And the job requirements. And if you start doing that, it will also help you down the road in the future when you start hiring staff as well. Next slide, please. And I mentioned the HR policies earlier today, and I know that HR policies may sound really formal, but at the core, they're just a guiding framework how things should operate within an organization or the farm. Again, I recommend you to look at your HR policies just as an instruction manual to ensure that everyone is on the same page. The definition is complicated, but in simple terms, the HR policies would just eliminate the guesswork by providing clear and repeatable steps for dealing with some complex situations or common situations that can happen on the farm. For example, a good, well-thought vacation policy ensures that all employees know how and when they can take time off without any disruption. Or a workplace safe policy helps to maintain protocols to protect everyone on the farm. Next slide, please. And how do you establish the need of an HR policy, especially if you're a smaller family farm? Let's look at an example. A younger son coming back to the farm with his family after graduating university and working in a city for the last 5 years. And what questions have been asked? Is there a probation period? How will I be paid? Will I get the same as my older brother, even so I started 5 years later and have family to support? Will my wife get compensated for helping with paperwork? What if I didn't fit in? How will I exit? All these questions can be asked in by a simple agreement. So you may not need to do a policy, but if you would like to pursue this further, you can design a compensation and performance review policy to start with. Next slide, please. There is another example. Grain farm hiring a foreign worker from South Africa for a 2-year term as a farm equipment operator. And there are questions again. Is there a probation period? How will I be paid? Will you pay overtime? Can I get a performance bonus in the end of the season? How it will be calculated? Can I take time off to visit my family in South Africa? For how long? What if I decide to quit? Do I need to provide you any notice? And again, start with the employment agreement, but these questions will definitely tell you that you need compensation and performance review policy and a vacation policy. And also remember, when you're hiring foreign workers, you must also have abuse-free work policy as a part of your compliance with the temporary foreign worker program. Next slide, please. I'm often asked a question about using ChatGPT to create job description or create HR policies. So the basic features of an effective HR policies: it must be clear, it must be written in a clear language, it must be consistent and applies to all the employees, including your family members and hired help. It must be transparent, so clearly communicate standards and expectations, aligns with the federal and provincial regulations, and also support the business strategic objectives. So if you're using ChatGPT, I would say probably yes, you can use ChatGPT to generate an HR policy, and you will get a good, strong draft. But it is really essential to humanize those content. So review it to ensure the wording is clear, simple, easy to understand, especially if you have foreign workers. And also, if you are generating a job description, for example, make sure that your farm values and your culture are also embedded into this job description. For example, if a teamwork or adaptability is critical for your farm, weave it into your job description. And the more tailored and the more human the job description is, the better chances that you attract the right talent, and also your job advertisement will stand out among others on Indeed or Kijiji. So my answer would be for using ChatGPT is think of it as your helpful assistant, but the final touch should always reflect the human side of your business. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of an HR policy structure. Doesn't mean that you need to have all of it. I would recommend to have at least an effective date, a purpose, governments how it will be reviewed, where it will be kept, and also a content, where do we use those guidelines, where does this apply, who needs to be involved, who is responsible for what, and summarize the basic elements. Next slide, please. This is another important information on a structure of a good HR policy. But you had a polling questions also on what do you find to be the most challenging in implementing HR policy? Because an HR policy can always remain something written in your computer that nobody follows. So my recommendation would be consult with your team when you are creating a policy, make them feel engaged. print it out in a like employee handbook in a small format that employees can refer. Or if you're asked a certain question about vacation, you can also mention, oh, you can actually find it in our policy, in our employee handbook. And also review it regularly and revise and make it a living document. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, best practices for HR management is recognize contributions of your employees, implement conflict resolution practices, encourage professional development, leverage technologies like WhatsApp chat for communication, or Asana tracker or Google task tracker for like some tasks management, establish clear roles and responsibilities, benchmark against industry standards, just know what's happening with your neighbors and the industry in general, foster open communication, encourage work-life balance, and create a shared vision. It's much easier to work together if you have the same vision. Next slide, please. And HR can be overwhelming. Very often I'm asked, when and where do I start? So start with a small, look at some so-called mess up situations, like compliance or legal issues you need to deal with right now, or like lack of workers for upcoming season. Start small, like you don't need to provide a description for all your roles and responsibilities. Just do a couple, develop 1 or 3 policies, and also think about execution and sustainability. Remember that questions, do we have policies, operational procedures, and checklists in place if the owner is not around? What will happen? So that's an important question. And also, like talking about HR policies, in the HR world, there are process-oriented HRs and people-oriented HRs. So for the process-oriented, the important is to ensure that we have policies in place. For people-oriented, we are more focused on building communication and culture, and making sure we take care of our people fairly. From my experience, there is no right or wrong approach. It depends on your business, it depends on your goals, even depends on your personal leadership style. And it's just about finding the balance that works for you. And a final thought, when it comes about HR, like remember that in human resources, humans come first and resources second. So at the end of the day, humans and people drive your business forward. And if you think of the people, success will follow. Next slide, please. This is just a slide with some useful resources from CARG, Agri-HR Toolkit. We have lots of resources with examples of job descriptions and employee handbooks. I also recommend, if you decide to work with the HR consultant, work with the certified consultant from CPHR or HRPA, but make sure that they have experience in agriculture, because it is a unique sector. There is also another resource, Academy to Innovate HR. They have lots of interesting templates and just like reading material that you may find useful. I also provided a link to Elaine Frey's blog and website on the succession planning, and also check provincial guides and publications for farm employees. Next slide, please. And here is my email address, my phone number. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I hope you had enjoyed the presentation and got some tips for your HR practices. Thank you so much.
Victoria, I have so many notes here. That was so informative. Thank you so much for your incredible presentation. And thank you to the audience that's here today. You are making my job very easy because you have asked some amazing questions, and we still have time. If you have questions for Victoria, put them in the Q&A, but I'm going to start with the amazing ones that are already in here. Victoria, someone is curious about your perspective. They're curious about why women are so often devalued in their roles on the farm.
That's a good question. I think it comes historically from like being a farm wife, right? And unfortunately, farming is still like a male-dominated environment, and a lot of time women have to prove themselves if they want to take management roles or some responsibilities. So. I don't have an answer like what to do with that. I just like be brave and like make your point and continue doing what you're already doing.
Absolutely. Um, I just want to make a note here. The dog with the hat, I have been that dog with that hat and on that ladder, let me tell you, as a woman on the farm here. Next question here is, do you think in family business it would be better to have someone who is not related to be the HR person?
Um, from my clients, I would say like you need to figure out if you need a full-time HR. You may need to bring an outside HR if you're just setting up your practices and policies. And it's actually probably good to have someone where emotions are not involved. And from time to time, maybe like address and talk to this person. At the same time, like I don't think like a small family farm needs a full-time HR, but it needs someone to be responsible for the HR function.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about outsourcing. And that doesn't mean you have to outsource every one of those jobs to do with HR. But if you were able to take two of those things off of your crazy hat, then that gives you some more time for that lucrative work-life balance you spoke of.
Yes, yes. We all need it.
Another comment I just wanted to make quickly about your presentation. I loved the slide about the business HR versus the farm HR office. And I have to say, in my home, that farm table is the cleanest I've ever seen it when that's what our farm office looks like at the kitchen table. One other question here is there somewhere that they can find sample templates for a regular weekly farm meeting?
I would recommend to check our HR Agri HR toolkit from CARC. So it should have some examples. And if you like, if you're doing your first meeting, I would recommend just ask people like, this is our first meeting. Like, what would you like to discuss? What would you like to get covered? And in the end, you will build a template yourself that would fit into your operation and to the needs of your farm as well.
Right. And with that template, do you recommend keeping those notes?
Um, I am against doing notes for the sake of notes, right? Because we're all busy, we're all wearing those hats, but maybe just noting some major like decisions, especially if you decide to do like bi-weekly meetings, like, right? Like sometimes we forget certain things. So just like take 10 minutes of your time after that meeting and just do like short bullet points, and that should be enough. Like, I don't think it is necessary to have like a couple of pages documents because you are creating work for the sake of work, right?
Absolutely. And if I can make a note here, we've talked about AI. Use AI during these meetings. You are able to record these meetings and have HR summarize or have AI summarize these things for you to make your job easier. And if you have a file on a shared drive that people can see, they have access to this. So let's work smarter, not harder.
Yes, and maybe people will be more careful as well if they know that there is an AI recorder on those meetings.
AI is listening. Be on your best behavior.
Yes.
How can people set boundaries between work and personal time on the farm?
It's more about what you agree. I think you just need to like decide on the certain rules that work for you and agree on them. As I mentioned, like 7 to 8 p.m., we are having supper. Everyone is in the house having supper. We're not discussing farm-related issues. We're discussing what's happening with our family, right? Try not to talk like in a bedroom about your business, like because you still have a family to run. I know it's very hard. Or like going to a date and your husband talk about like other things rather than farm business. But at the same time, you also like if you have those meetings and those regular check-ins, they will fill in that space like that you need to talk about the business, and it will free up space for your personal time when you can enjoy your family time as well.
Right. And I'm putting together the piece that you talked about, the evaluations of the sandwich. If you are finding yourselves having those conversations about business, maybe have the top bread be something that's going well in your business and that you can discuss and compliment on and say, we're doing a really good job. Here's maybe something that we can work on, and end it off with that nice fluffy piece of a compliment the bottom of that
Yes.
sandwich as well. You can use that for different areas.
Yes. Yes.
Victoria, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for all of the information that you provided for us today. I know I took a lot out of it, and I know that all of the incredible women here did as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Well, that does it for our time here today. I hope you were able to take away actionable insights that will help you address that illustrious work-life balance and all things HR on your farm. You will receive a link to a recording in a few days. And as I mentioned before, please don't forget to register for the last session to complete the FCC's Women's Series.